everybody, and welcome to the Disconnection Hotline. This is Rudyard's monthly open mic poetry and creative writing event.
It's called Dirigible Opium Den. In the not-too-distant future, in a world more broken than now, entertainment and escape reach new levels, new heights. The borders and laws, blurred, bribed, and undermanned, set the scene and spark a business that soothes the aching heart. Just outside of town and down a long stretch of road sits an airport, a bar, and a dirigible opium den. Come one, come all, young and old, cowardly or bold. The world is shit and you're sick of it. Dirigible opium den. It's a 12-hour flight to right back here. It's just what the doctor ordered. Why? That's your doctor now. He's a frequent flyer. The pilot is drunk and the flight attendants steal, but the drugs are real. So sit back and forget your troubles on the world's first dirigible opium den.
There must have been at least 500 people in the church that day, the most I ever saw in my time at St. Paul's, and I was looking for a face, because something about that chuckle gnawed at my chest. Took me to the day long before when I found Mpa, my father, with the woman he had chosen to build a new home with, and our lives were razed to rubble. I found her just as Father Udoka cleared his throat and restarted the ceremony, this time with some measure of shame or solemnity, you might say. And she was right there, a young woman perched on the edge of the second pew from the altar. Same dark skin, large eyes that peeled through you, a nose still too big for her face, even though she had grown a little more into it since I had seen her last. That rain-soaked night, she was whisked up the ground of Our Lady of Sorrows in her father's station wagon to some convent in Lagos, we were told, and I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. We were 15, and here she was, a whole decade later, dressed not in a habit, but a green ashwebi dress that wrapped her figure so snugly it could have been her skin. She looked so out of place in that parish stock as it was in a dusty town. The mic went slack in my hand and bumped against Father Udoka's lips, and the old man, who had coal-smeared skin and spotted a glistening patch atop his head, made too big a show of pushing the equipment away from his mouth. I held my eyes above the crowd for as long as I could. When I caved in and found Ufoma's face again, found her eyes tearing now with smothered laughter, searching my face, I didn't have it in me to smile back. And no, this isn't Ufoma's story either, should you wonder. Why would it be? She had always taken space wherever she planted herself, Ufoma. And over the course of our childhood together, those mornings on Mma's farm where the harmattan and yam vines tore at our skins and the adults cussed at us as we raced between the mounds playing catcher, and her laughter burst through the crisp air with the fullness. I'd accepted this as an immutable fact of her existence. But I was a boy then, naive to my place, to my right of place in the order of things. I wasn't anymore, not on that sunburned Sunday in 1994 when Ufoma resurfaced. The last I had heard of her was some rumor that she was engaged to an activist turned journalist who had just started a newspaper in Lagos. I had paid that talk no mind at first because this was Amanzi after all. What else was there to do but plant yam in the morning and gossip at night? Yet, the more I thought about it, the less outrageous it seemed. The Ufoma I remembered was born without a capacity for fear, and it had, in my young eyes at least, molded her into this immense figure, godlike, scary in equal measure. Wouldn't it make sense that she would end up with someone reckless enough to write exposés on the Abacha regime? Perhaps I am misconstruing the fact of Ufoma's return. She had as much right to Amanzi as I did, seeing as she was a daughter of the soil. Our paths had crossed when our parents, civil servants, all of them but my mother, began worshipping at St. Nicholas, the parish that sat between both of our towns, regarded then as the unofficial church for the well-to-do. They ran the catechism classes, our parents. They ran the Legio Maria meetings, and they stood behind Ufoma and I with beaming in-law smiles the Sunday we took First Holy Communion. They made sure we ended up in the same boarding school in the city, but that was about as far as Ufoma and I got on equal footing. By the time my parents' marriage fell apart, I had already begun to fall behind with schoolwork. I was asked to repeat a grade the same year Ufoma got a double promotion, and I would be lying if I said it didn't leave a sour taste on my tongue. It wasn't long before I failed another grade and barely scraped through my final exams, and the man had begun to whisper this idea of following in Father Udoka's footsteps. He was a good man, after all, she said. He had been the one who made it his mission to visit her every Sunday evening in the aftermath of her husband's abscondment. And she loved the old little man until the day that she died.
I'm in the middle of writing my novel right now, and it's just kind of sucked me in. I've been like a horse with blinders on. So just for fun, I've been writing one new character every day for a future project. I don't really have the whole project figured out. I'm just writing. I know that the title will be My Life Among the Cowboy Poets, and the characters will be exaggerated versions of invented cowboy poets, each one crazier than the next. So, my first character I wrote today, I'll share him with you now. Bill Big Country Bandolini, born Galveston, Texas, 1971, died Mexico City, 2021. Bill wouldn't have liked to hear himself referred to as a cowboy poet. More than likely, Bill would give you his famous gap-toothed grin, put his massive arm on your shoulder, and lay a blast of beer breath on your face as he said, "No, I ain't, son. I'm a storyteller." And that he was. Bandolini, son of first-generation Italian immigrants who operated a small specialty meat store in Galveston, Texas. They worked with Sal Maceo from 1942 until he died in 1951. After that, the family moved to Houston. His father worked a series of odd jobs before opening up his own restaurant. Their former employer, Sal Maceo, as it turned out, went down as a racketeer and small-time gangster, but remains remembered as a kind of Robin Hood to the people of Galveston. He once famously escorted Al Capone off the island, and he was well known for saving businesses on the brink of bankruptcy, asking nothing in return. The Maceos cared about the island. People say that. They'd say that today. If you don't believe me, go down and ask. A whole empire crumbled, but it was not forgotten. The Maceo specialty meat shop exists. To this day, the last remnant of a once great dynasty. It's always been hard to be an immigrant in this country, and this probably will never change. His immigrant status, coupled with the fact that he was Jewish, marked young William Bandolini for what seemed like forever. He relied on his own rich inner life to keep him sane through middle school. Blessed with a truly boundless imagination, Bill would improvise in his room alone at night, and every single story his little mind conjured invariably ended up set out west, on the plains of Texas or the rock-strewn bush of Nevada. But this fantastical dreamscape had little or nothing to do with the reality of that region. Young William Bandolini, big country, dreamed of casting off everything life had so unjustly imposed upon him. He fought tooth and nail to become something better than what he was born to be. He saved some money, begged and stole, even turned his first trick, all until he bought himself an acoustic guitar at the age of 12. It had been all he ever wanted, to become a songwriter, to tell real stories about real people, the kind of stories that no one bothered to tell, about people like him. When I asked him how much he felt at that moment, having achieved such a long-held goal in his heart, to have the guitar in his hands, he just shrugged and said, "Well, I started saving up for my next big purchase, a gun. That turned out to be one fucking hell of a bad idea." What he really lacked, Bill decided one drunken night, in the only sort of gay bar he could find in College Station, was a persona. He had the panache, he didn't have the persona. He just turned 19 years old. He bought a gun, a .38 revolver that reminded him of the kind Popeye, Gene Hackman's character, wore on his ankle in The French Connection. When he reached the point of drunkenness in which mad thoughts invade the mind under the guise of perfectly reasonable ideas, he decided to knock over a gas station, putting 3 bullet holes through the ceiling and 1 through the window pane. They caught up with him an hour later, asleep in his truck. He'd only come away with $150. Prison wasn't all those country songs cracked it out to be. Bill ended up getting 5 years, which the judge assured him was a lenient sentence, considering the utter recklessness, the shameless nature of his crime. Thank God the prosecution never found out I was gay, Bill sighed. Bill sighed when he told me his story. If they'd brought that piece of evidence into the court, I'd have gotten twice as long. The Walls, Huntsville's state prison, and the current home of the death chamber in Texas, is where all inmates initially go after catching chain out of county. It's what's known as a transfer facility, meaning inmates will likely spend no longer than 2 or 3 years there, either waiting to be killed, transferred to another unit, or paroled. Billy certainly staked his hopes on the last eventuality. In prison, Billy began doing 2 things which would later alter the course of his life forever. The first, he began reading and writing poetry. The second, he began working out his body, his mind, his soul. It all came from some Buddhist book he read. It was all the same force, he decided. By bettering his body, as he'd read in another book by a Japanese man named Yukio Mishima, he bettered everything about himself. Perfection existed within the reach of certain men, and Bill believed himself to be among them, destined for a glorious life and an even better death. His writing earned him a reputation for penmanship, which blossomed into a fruitful jailhouse career. Although most inmates were still outwardly aggressive and hostile to homosexuals, prison didn't necessarily frown on it in every case. No one dared to call him a punk or a faggot again. The last inmate to do so got his jaw broken by a single punch before Bill threw him from the 2nd-story tier of their cell block. I broke the man's neck, collar, and spine, Bill told me, tears welling up in his big, kind eyes. I just had to do it, man. It made me sick, but there weren't another way around it. No one said a word. They were so scared of me after that. I guess killing that man saved my life. He met a boy in there, a boy named Arthur Mattis, who'd been a bright and promising mathematician as a child and grew up to become a successful accountant at a prestigious firm like many of his brothers and sisters. Old Austin money. They claimed to be descendants of the great Stephen F. Austin. And their name, however, would become forever besmirched when a cache of drugs and guns were found at the border, and the money trail eventually led the feds back to Arthur. He'd only balanced their books a few times, these gentlemen. He incurred some gambling debts, his lifelong vice, to the wrong people. These fellas don't ask nicely neither, Arthur told Bill late one night, the 2 of them together at on the bottom bunk of their cot. By then, Bill had made sure to have Arthur moved into his cell after bribing a few bosses and calling in a couple favors. You did the right thing, Bill said, rubbing his large, rough palm up and down Arthur's stomach. We're not going to be in here forever. When I get out, I'm going to publish books. I'm going to be the first great writer from Texas. What are you talking about? Arthur laughed. There's like tons of great writers from Texas. There are, Bill said, incredulous and embarrassed at the same time. But don't worry, Arthur said, kissing him chastely on the lips in teased affection. There's always room for another. From then on, Bill devoted his prison sentence to sharpening his mind. His family sent him dozens of books, beginning with all the classics. Homer, Aeschylus, Euripides, Shakespeare, Dante, Virgil. But it was the Shakespeare that finally grabbed him, got him by the soul the way no other thing had until then, including Arthur himself. He pored over the tragedies and histories, favoring them to the comedies, at least at first. He felt a sudden, bewildered jealousy at the intensity with which Bill devoted himself to his work. A month later, he produced a book called Desensitization Tank, a cyclone of prison poems by Bill Big Country Bandolini.
This poem is called Whitey on the Moon by Gil Scott-Heron. And, yeah, it speaks for itself. A rat droned with my sister with Whitey on the moon. Her face and arms began to swell, and Whitey's on the moon. I can't pay no Dr. Bill, but Whitey's on the moon. 10 years from now, I'll be paying still while Whitey's on the moon. Man just upped my rent last night, 'cause Whitey's on the moon. No hot water, no toilets, no lights, but Whitey's on the moon. I wonder why he upping me, 'cause Whitey's on the moon. I was already praying I'm 50 a week with Whitey on the moon. Taxes taking my whole damn check, junkies making me a nervous wreck. The price of food is going up, as if that shit wasn't enough. Rat dumps bit my sister Nell with Whitey on the moon. Her face and arm began to swell, but Whitey's on the moon. Was all that money I made last year for Whitey on the moon? How come there ain't no money here? Whitey on the moon. You know I just bound my handful of Whitey on the moon. I think I'll send these doctor bills, Hermes special, to Whitey on the moon.
I'm going to read a short story. It's called Long Division, and I think what you need to know is that the narrator is a high school physics teacher, and the story moves back and forth in time between time in her childhood and then time as her as an adult. So I hope you enjoy. Long Division. Problem 1. 2 weights are connected by a pulley system at the corner of a tabletop. The lighter one sits on the table while the heavier one is suspended from the edge. The classic question, what is the acceleration of the heavier weight? Each year, once my Physics 1 students learn about Newton and his apple, about free body diagrams, about the rate of a rate, about weight versus mass, I give them this question. They are given the whole period to figure it out. My bad students work diligently. They draw out pictures, label the gravitational forces, mark acceleration directions, and figure out the change in axes. Then they get stuck. My good students work diligently. They realize the acceleration of the weight moving across the table must equal the acceleration of the weight falling down. They replace the tension of the strings that connect the weights with their respective forces and solve. At the end of the day, I gather up my things, shut off the lights, and close the classroom door behind me. I drive out to the senior home on the corner of Walsham and Court, deep in the outskirts of Queens. The facility sports a community garden by the entrance and weeping willow trees that line the property to create a natural boundary. Linda is the regular guard on Fridays. Nothing out of the ordinary today, she says. I'm glad to hear it, I reply. I walk past the orderlies towards room 302. I have no reason to be nervous, yet my palms are wet and the hallways look too bright. Good work, Baba, I say when I walk in. His suitcase is packed. He's dressed in a black t-shirt and sweatpants. His bifocals hang from a string around his neck. Are you ready? I look at his face. He's not scared. He's very calm, determined. He nods. We walk back to the front desk where I sign him out permanently. When we step outside, I start to cry. It's okay, he says. I'm telling you, aren't I? It's okay. I help him in the passenger side, and we drive. Let me rephrase. You are connected by a rope to your mother or your father, and you stand on a cliff while they dangle off the edge. Forget the grit of the dirt that you dig your heels into. Forget the force that the earth exerts upon you just as you exert upon it. Forget air resistance and center of mass. The principle rests only on Newton's second law, F equals ma. The two of you aren't individual entities, but one system. Your mass is your bodies collectively. Your acceleration is equal. The primary external force that makes you move is the gravitational pull of that person connected to you. The only students who understand this concept are the ones who love their parents so much they've fallen off the edge before cutting the rope. They're few, but they're the ones I feel sorry for. When Baba chastises me, he always chooses an English word. Tu iki stupid naki. Tu ho chishak idiot. Shob shamai silly mistake. Shob shamai. This exchange happens every night after dinner. We sit in the living room, me on the floor, my elbows taut against the coffee table and a pencil in my hand. Him on the couch in his undershirt with my 4th grade math workbook in his lap and a cigarette. The only light Baba will allow is that of the table lamp, and it shines obtrusively onto the scrap paper from his office, which I use to write out my answers. Baba works at a software company. I don't know what that means except that the boss is a fucker and that he speaks a number of languages like Java and Python and C++. Every movement has a consequential response. If I yawn, I'm told I only get sleepy when it's time to study. If my gaze strays when Baba is teaching, I'm asked, what can be more interesting than what I'm learning? Periodically, I'm asked if I'm paying attention. The worst is when I'm asked to hand in my paper so he can check my answers. You're the child of 2 PhDs and you can't even do long division properly? Shameful. Because I'm American born, I can't handle insults. Because I'm Indian raised, I can't get angry. Naturally, most nights end in crying. Why are you crying? It's almost as though he's asking why I'm breathing. If it gets really bad, Ma steps in. Let it go, she tells him. Some nights he doesn't, and we sit there for another hour, but when he does, I go up and curl up with my latest chapter book in bed. My room is decorative. At night, Ma and I sleep in the master bedroom while Baba takes the guest room. Sometimes, though, Baba comes into our room first, his anger gone, and asks me to step on his back to massage it. I hug the wall to keep my balance, and I walk up and down along his spine. I rub his forehead and scalp with my fingers and pull out as many gray hairs as I can find. Baba, 50 years young as he likes to say, asks me his customary questions. Aloki, will you take care of me when I'm old? Yes, Baba. Am I old now? Yes, Baba. What? Really? That's why I'm taking care of you now. Problem 2. Each year I teach 4 sections of introductory physics. On the first day I have my students push their desks to the edges of the classroom, clearing the middle. In the center I hang a 12-pound bowling ball from a closed hook in the ceiling, about waist-high, tethered by thick wire. I ask for a volunteer, and for some odd reason it is usually a boy. Perhaps they think this is a lesson in strength. This is a lesson in potential, I tell the class. The boy stands at one end of the room and I draw the ball back, keeping the wire taut, pulling it from the center of the room until it's almost in front of his face. Keep it right here, I say, and he holds it. Have you ever broken your nose? He shakes his head. Don't move an inch. I step away, count down, 3, 2, 1, and give him a quick nod. He grins as he releases it. The ball sails through the air, gathering speed. It slows down near the end of its arc, stays suspended for a moment, and then changes direction. The boy's smile fades as it returns. His face twitches, and for a moment I worry this will be the time I'm sued for classroom injury. But the ball stops a few inches short of his nose before dropping back. We both sigh. Air resistance, I tell them afterward. That's what saved your classmate, ladies and gentlemen. The next time I visit Baba, the orderlies say it's not a good idea. He's acting out again, one exclaims. He tried again this morning, so we've had security stationed at the end of the hallway. Do you really want to try, Mrs. Davis? When I open the door to his room, things are strewn everywhere. Old books covered in peeling newsprint, wrinkled t-shirts, single socks missing their mates, his weekly pill organizer, and an array of photographs. Shots of him and Ma from when they were younger, in front of the Red Fort in Delhi, from beaches in Goa and at Chantiniketan. An overturned hard-shell suitcase sits by the doorway. Late again, Baba states. He sits cross-legged on the floor. Chris is staying late, I told him. I'd meet the lawn care man before I came here. Oh, he has a late night at work? What about you? Don't you have late nights? No, my classes end on time, every day. I motion toward the mess. What is this? Baba's glasses fall from where they're balanced on his head. This place is so shitty, Babu. He cleans the lenses with the corner of his linen shirt, and the people are such pieces of shit. What else can I do? You need to stop trying to escape. Who said I'm trying to escape? His laugh is hollow. You've become just like them. Didn't I teach you how to think properly? You can't keep someone stuck inside a building and tell them what to do. These people need to understand that trapping us here doesn't mean we're living. We're existing, but we're not living. He slams his hands beside him. His shouting attracts his nurse, and we both stiffen when she opens the door. Everything all right in here, Mr. Mitra? Everything's okay, Baba says, switching to English. No trouble, madam. After she closes the door behind her, I start to clean the room. You can't keep trying to leave. It's not safe. He gives me an indignant look. Not safe. Fuck safety. Your whole life has been safe. Baba, we're not doing this again. Listen to me. He thumps his hands on the floor. This, he motions up and down, this is not you. Do you understand? What you had, what you still have, is more than teaching at a high school and being married to that. Anyway, if you want to cage me up like an animal, so be it. Say you want this, and I'll stop and be polite and eat my oatmeal every morning until I die in here. It won't take long, I promise. Stop it, I retort. You make everything sound so easy, but it's not. You can't control my life, Baba. You think you know everything, but you don't. He waves me away. Leave. Go home. Think about what I'm telling you. Come back here when you figure out whether the opposite of safety is danger or freedom. I am 11. I sit with my class in plastic chairs that fill the gymnasium for our 6th grade award ceremony. As the teacher shushes us quiet, I watch the doorway. The white children's parents arrive. The room fills. I'm not surprised mine have not come. Ma can't drive and Baba doesn't have a lot of leave from work. A few minutes later, though, the main doors creak open. Ma and Baba find seats in the back, saying, excuse me, as they trot over the other parents' shoes. Once they sit, Baba starts his camcorder. The teachers hand out awards for sports and extracurriculars. Baba stops the camcorder almost immediately. The 3 of us know I'm not to win any of these. Soon, however, they begin the subject awards. There are 10 in each, 5 bronze, 3 silver, and 2 gold. I win gold in science, English, and social studies. My math teacher calls out the names of the first 2 silver winners. The third name is mine. I make my way to the stage, the 3 gold medals clinking against each other around my neck, and grip the certificate she hands me tightly as someone from the crowd snaps a photo of me. After the flash, I see my parents in the background. They're both smiling, and Baba is shaking his head. "Let me see those," Ma exclaims on the drive home. I hand her the prizes. She admires the medals, my name engraved on each. She opens the certificate and traces her index finger over the letters, Aloki Mitra. "Dako," she says to Baba, moving it into his line of vision. "All good," Baba says, his eyes on the road. "But the mats, Babu. Every time, the mats." I stay silent. As we get close to home, Baba pulls into our regular Dunkin' Donuts in the strip mall from across the street from our neighborhood, which we usually visit each month on Sunday afternoons. Baba lets me pick out 2 celebratory donuts, Boston cream and French cruller. We sit and eat. Ma bites into a maple frosted, and Baba sips on a small black coffee. "This summer, you're going to practice SAT problems," he says. "They'll be harder than what you'll see on that high school admissions test, but I want you to be more than ready when it's time to take it." Baba says SAT like the word for sitting down, like when he sat down and decided I would apply to the best magnet high school in the country. "It is the best," he told me 2 years ago. "I will make sure you get in." School ends that Friday. On the bus ride home, we are stopped at a light in front of the middle school I'll attend in the fall. The building is beautiful and new, with one side made completely of glass. I watch students older and more sophisticated spill out of the doors. I try to picture myself in the crowd, but the signal turns green and we quickly pull away. Baba allows me that Saturday to relax. I help Ma buy groceries from the market and go to the pool in the afternoon. One Sunday, Baba wakes me up at 7 o'clock. In his hand, he holds a thick book with orange letters, Gruber's SAT practice. We sit on the front porch and he turns to the first exam. Each test has 10 sections. I have a notebook in which I number the lines, as both my parents hate the idea of writing in books. As I begin the first section, Baba starts to mow the lawn. When I finish, I call him. A sheen of sweat covers his forehead. "Get me a glass of ice water." I do, with some lime and salt, and he chugs it. Then he reads out the answers. It is a math section, and I've gotten 7 questions wrong. "Put on your shoes." "Why?" "You're going to run." "Where?" "Here," he says. "Run around the house 7 times. "No, I won't." "Yes." "No." Baba is silent. He goes back to the mower and starts the engine. I breathe heavily and sit on the steps. A man passes the house, led briskly by a giant dog that looks like a bear. The only other sounds are of the mower and the wind. No one else is awake. A few months later, as we both sit in my classroom, I invite him to come home with me. "What are your parents like?" he asks. He's made a series circuit, disassembles it, and starts to make a parallel one. I have taught him how to do both these things. I don't even know how to answer that. He thinks for a bit. "If you had to use one word to describe your mom and dad, what would it be?" "My mom is dependable. My dad," I pause. "What do I use to describe Baba? I can think of a number of words, but none come close. I've never been good with words." Christopher has finished the circuit, and I watch him turn the light bulb it's attached to on and off. "Electron." "What?" "He's like an electron. And lightning," I point to the bulb, "and negative. But without electrons, well, there would be nothing to attract protons. In fact, if you got rid of electrons, all the protons in the world would instantly repel each other. Everything would explode." The next weekend, my analogy backfires. I bring Christopher home. He wears a shirt and tie, brings a bottle of wine. Dinner begins with Baba asking all the expected questions. When he finds out where Christopher went to school, what Christopher majored in, and what Christopher wants to do, I hear the change in his voice. "A history degree? What will you do with that?" "Baba." An awkward silence ensues, which Christopher breaks by trying to explain all the uses of his college major, but it's too late, and he soon excuses himself to the bathroom. When he's out of earshot, Baba shakes his head. "Of all the people in the world." I get up. Ma tells me to sit back down, but I ignore her. I leave with Christopher. I don't invite him home anymore, nor do I return home myself. At first I think it'll blow over in a few weeks. Months pass. On my birthday, Ma calls me. When she asks for my address so she can mail me a gift, I cry. Then I update her about my life. "Yes, Christopher and I have moved in together. A place in Queens. Yes, it's pretty serious. No, I will not apologize."